All right, guys, welcome in. Scott Beebe with the Business on Purpose podcast. My buddy Jarrod Warren of the Success 101 podcast. We got podcasters all over the screen, Jarrod. Happy Thursday, man.
Man, it is here. It is almost time for the Christmas. I know you've got kids that are a little bit older than mine, but I'm sure it doesn't get any slower as quickly as this comes around every single year. So it's I cannot believe it's already here.
Absolutely. It is. I would say it's crept upon us. It has not. It has absolutely flown upon us. Ashley and I, we have been every single day going, let's slow this train down. It really stinks down here because of the hurricane that hit a couple months ago. So my wife's a teacher. So it's Thursday, 3 days before Christmas, and she's teaching today. All these teachers are out there teaching today when they're used to, having that break off. So it's been a little bit different for us. But anyway, I'm excited. Jarrod, you and I have gotten to know each other over the last month or two after you were kind enough to have me on your podcast. And immediately we clicked and just started talking about all sorts of stuff. And then last week you introduced me to Smiletime, which is actually what we're broadcasting through right now to get to Facebook Live. And I love this kind of technology. And
yeah, it's awesome.
I think what people are going to find from you, Jarrod, is you're the kind of guy that you're constantly – back when I played football, our coaches would tell us, head on a swivel, head on a swivel. You're constantly looking around. It seems
haven't heard
like
that
you
in a
live
while.
that kind of life.
Yeah, and I feel like I live like it sometimes. I'm getting a lot better at not I would like to live with a head on a swivel and not feel like I have a head on a swivel all the time, if that makes sense. So it can be a little bit dizzying, not to use the pun too much there. But yeah, no, I am, boy, I tell you, 2015 was an incredible learning year for me. And I'm so fortunate that's the greatest thing right now that I can say to people is that my average client that I work with in my financial planning practice, I would say at this point is somewhere around 46 to 48 years old. If I ran a report I did a while back and it was somewhere around there. So I'm working with a lot of 50, 60-year-olds as well. I'm working with some younger people that I get brought in on from some of our younger advisors here to help them out. But I would tell you the biggest thing is I've been able to learn and be wise and beyond my years to for lack of better words there, because the people that I'm working with now, Scott, how old are you? I'll put you on the spot.
I'm 41 years old. I'm in my 40s now.
41. So, there's a lot of learning. The wisest people that I've ever heard out there have said something along the lines of getting old is a blessing because it just means that you hopefully have learned a lot more than the people that are walking around you. Something to that effect. So the thing that I am so grateful for and fortunate for is that I feel like I have learned and been wise and beyond my years simply by getting to work with these clients who are in positions that you and I have not been to yet. And as a person, but especially as a male who is out there trying to accomplish, certain things, sometimes that's pride or ego or whatever, but we think we should be at these milestones at certain times of our life. And what I found is that most people hit this point in their life and they realize, man, what a wasted life, to use the phrase that they've given to me here, what a wasted life. If I'd known even half of what I know now in my 20s and 30s, how different would my life look today? And so 2015 was a huge, learning year for me. And I was fortunate at 34 to have that happen to where I just have so much perspective to go along with your phrase of head on a swivel. Man, there's so many opportunities, so many things out there like this Smiletime. I mean, who would have thought even a year or two ago that we would be connecting like this? And there's so many things out there like that to grow your business and use in your own life to better yourself. But man, I'm on fire this year and grateful for that. Fortunate for that, and hope that continues, and grateful that it happened at a young age.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons I was drawn to the platform that you have. There's a magnetism and energy, and I think people can see that. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this, and because of our time, we're actually going to do the Business on Purpose podcast in kind of two parts. So we're going to start on this first part. And for those of you, since we're broadcasting Facebook Live, if you're not familiar both with the Business on Purpose podcast or the Success 101 podcast, both are pretty much interview-based podcasts. Sometimes I'll do a monologue, Jarrod. I think sometimes you'll do a monologue periodically. And but for the most part, it's a great way to be able to interact. The reason we started the podcast, we wanted to interview small business owners and business pros who are trying to actively integrate their faith in their work, which is a huge challenge. So let's dive in, Jarrod. One of the things that we always start out with.
By the way, I'm going to give a shout out. I looked down at my phone just now that was up, and we got Aaron Walker doing a Facebook Live here. So we're going to give him a big shout out.
Big Aaron Walker, my business coach, my buddy. He is all over Facebook Live. If you don't know anything about Aaron Walker, go to viewfromthetop.com. We'll have him on here at some point.
Yeah, his new book's out. I'm anxious to get my hands on it.
Just got shipped, so you can go check that out. View from the Top. You need to read it. That guy's got. You talk about experience, and Aaron Walker's the guy. Like actually, when you were talking, his head popped into my head, which I don't know if that's a good thing, but anyway, as I was thinking about that, I mean, here's a guy. 37 years, well, actually probably more than that, 37 years of marriage experience, almost 40 years of business experience. I mean, this guy's seen so much, and you talk about that experience. So there are things that drive you all along the way, Jarrod. I want to know from you, is there a verse or a quote as you're progressing through life? This is a verse or quote that you look at and go, wow, that has really profoundly changed the way I look at life.
You know, I would say still to this day, I would say that one of my favorites out there, and I think sometimes it's a little bit misused, but it's without a vision, the people perish. And, you know, I've always said that and one of the things I talked about on my own podcast, which went out this morning before we did this one, we were doing it on Facebook Live, but one of the things that I'd mentioned there was I've always said that I'm a guy with a small vision. I'm not creative. I'm not, you know, fill in the blank, whatever. I've always said my wife is super creative. If I have a blank sheet of paper in front of me and I go, hey, I'm trying to do this business plan. Well, what is it? What's it about? Okay, what are you trying to accomplish? I mean, she can know nothing about the subject and literally within an hour, 30 minutes, have an entire piece of paper. Well, what do? I can go execute, right? So I'm executor, but I've always said I don't have a big vision. I'm not that creative. And that verse really hits me in the office that I'm running here with these financial advisors and what I'm trying to build here, that I'm going to continue to have a small vision until I stop saying that I have a very small vision. I don't know, you know, I don't want to just say words just to not sound a certain way. I want it to be real, but that's going to be my big focus this year in 2017 is to stop saying a lot of the things that I've been saying my whole life, like how burnout I used to be. Well, I found that burnout was just not pursuing my passions. How I've had a small vision, how I'm not creative, how, you know, there's so many things that affirmation or lack of affirmation can either slow us down or bring us forward. So that would be the first thing. And then I think just one that I've heard over time, and you've probably heard it as well, that I'm using going forward is if you try to chase two rabbits, you'll catch neither one of them. It's something like that, right? And that's like an old Russian proverb, I think, but I think it's true. Head on the swivel, as you mentioned, but not feeling like my head's always on a swivel to where I'm controlling things. I have systems in place. I've got a vision that I'm working on and learning how to create that habit, but I'm also not just chasing after a lot of things, muscling it through, as I've called it before, and just really beating my head against the wall, which is okay when you're young and you've got that tenacity, but now there's too much on my plate, too much at risk to just live haphazardly out of control. So I want to create a vision for the future so that there's not a perishing, but then I also want to make sure that I'm not just chasing after a lot of things and then end up empty-handed or, like most people, 50% of where I would have wanted to go.
Yeah, you know, this is something that is a sweet spot for me. I resonate with vision. Vision is what I push nonstop. And there's actually 3 different versions of that one verse that you said. The first is where there is no vision, people become unhinged. So whatever they're connected to, they become unhinged. The second version is where there is no vision, people begin to scatter. And think about it, it's true, because when you're unhinged, you just kind of float. And then the third version is where there's no vision, people die, as you've said. And so to take that logical progression of when I'm not connected, then I begin to scatter. When I scatter, I just kind of run out in the middle of the highway and I'm going to get run over at that point. And then the other complementary verse that I want to encourage you with, but I also want to encourage everybody else with, is the Habakkuk 2. I think it's verse 2 or something like that. Write the vision down so that those who read it may run. So those of you like Jarrod who might struggle with vision, there's a great discipline, especially this time of year, where you can just sit down and just write out, what do you see? What do you see? And so that's what I want to encourage you to do. Jarrod, I want you to take us behind the scenes a little bit and give us a little bit of your background personally. And then we'll take a couple of minutes to dive into how you do business on purpose.
Yeah, so I come from an extremely small town, Linden, Texas. It's kind of where the border of Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana all meet, if you can kind of picture that environment, right? So Don Henley, Hotel California, that's our claim to fame, right? But for a long time, we had a blinking red light and a Dairy Queen, and that was about it. And not a very good Dairy Queen, but it is pretty poor service. But so that's where my parents have lived their entire life. That's where they will stay until they're gone. We've got some family land up there now that I look forward to getting out on my Polaris Ranger here in a couple of days and cruising around. I could just stay out there all day. But when you come from an environment like that, you know, my wife comes from Dallas. She's lived in Dallas most of her life, and I've got cousins in Houston, and just know tons of people now in bigger places. And I'm grateful for that small town upbringing. You know, when you're there, you want to see the entire world, and then you get out there and you see the whole world, and you go, man, it's pretty nice back there, sitting in a rocking chair. I mean, I feel like I'm saying that, and I'm 90 years old here, but you know, it really is slowing down because you're more controlled. And that's the thing that really I had to learn this past year that we'll probably get into here in a second, is that letting go to me was weakness. Letting go to me of just the grind was failure. It was surrender. It was giving up. It was all of those things. And what I've learned in my business and how I'm now doing it on purpose is that letting go is what you have to do to come at this thing from a position of strength. And again, I learned that at 34 years old, very grateful for that. I've got 50-year-old clients right now that they're not even wanting to admit it yet, but you can tell that it's taken a toll on them and they haven't learned how to let go. So I see that and I go, man, how can I be intentional? How can I be very purposeful about what I'm doing to where letting go is a position of strength? And I know just from what I know about you, you're very diligent about being on purpose, hence your business name, right? And coaching other people to that. But that's really been a big lesson for me that I'll hopefully carry with me and continue to master from now on.
I know that's got to be a challenge for somebody as driven as you are to be able to, as you mentioned, let go. A lot of times what that means is letting go. In fact, we're about to lead a group coaching time right here where today what we're focused on is the delegation roadmap. It's all about letting go and saying, all right, here are the tasks that, yes, I am capable of doing, but in my business, in my personal life, whatever, I don't need to be doing these things right now, because when I do these things, they cloud the real brilliance that's inside of me in doing that. So you've given us a little snapshot of you personally. Take us on the inside of your business. Let us know what and why you do what you do to live out your business on purpose.
Yeah, so I run, I've got a financial firm here in Dallas that I run, probably a 30-person office here that I'm trying to build to a much larger office here in the Dallas area, in the Las Colinas area. And I started off my career in Houston. I had a good buddy of mine that was working down there for a financial company, and I always knew I wanted to be in the financial world. I just really didn't know, again, back to the vision thing, I really didn't know what that was supposed to look like. And I think that's okay when you're younger. I mean, some people fall into things by accident. I would say most people do. You don't come out of school knowing exactly what you want to do. But I was blessed and fortunate enough to fall into this business that has just been absolutely amazing from the standpoint of learning pretty much what I went back to a second ago, learning from those who have gone before me, learning from those who are much wiser than I am, and seeing myself years from now with that playing out, in my life. So I get to sit down with people and put together financial plans for them. I get to put together, whether it's insurance, investments, estate planning, any of those sort of things. And it's amazing to me. It's always been so amazing. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with anybody publicly. It's amazing to me that I get to meet with somebody that I didn't know 10 minutes ago before I walked in the room. And suddenly they're sharing things with me on a highly, highly confidential and strategic level that they're not even telling people in their own family. Just because finances are such a hush hush thing and nobody wants to talk about it. But I take that with great pride and great responsibility to look after the needs of my clients, to put things in place for them that maybe not, we won't see progress in today, so to speak. Some of these things take time to build and see themselves out in the plan. But boy, I'm getting a lot more thank yous now from my clients than I did, 12, 13 years ago. People are starting to see as they get older the value of planning, and it's really built my conviction around helping people. I think, as I mentioned before, people would say financial planning is important. Very few people right now, our age especially, would say that it's urgent. Mm-hmm. And until you're provoked, I don't care if it's going to the dentist, I don't care if it's fill in the blank, until you are provoked by something that's important that now becomes urgent, you're probably not going to take action on it. So my big conviction and passion is getting the word out to people of how absolutely important it is to plan. But then really what my conversations typically turn into is more of I don't know if it's a mentoring or just a friend or just a confidant or an accountability partner. So much of it turns into so much more than just business. And that's where I have a lot of fun diving into those relationships.
It's one of the things as a business owner now that I've seen for so long, Jarrod. It's why we started the business, why we started the podcast, is I was struggling to try and figure out how to merge faith, work, purpose, value, vision, all of those sorts of things. And then I realized on the business stage, it's right there because of those interactions. When somebody lays out their finances, they're laying out some of the most personal information that you've talked about. And so all of a sudden you've got access into their lives almost immediately to be able to have much deeper conversation in that. So I want you to answer this question for us, Jarrod. In the business that you've run into hurdles, challenges that you've had to jump. What's a major challenge in your business that you've had to, or that you've come up against, but you've solved the problem? Because the next time we get on this podcast, I'm going to ask you the flip side of that. And that is, what's a major issue you have in your business right now that's not solved? So that's going to be next time. But right now, talk to us about a major issue, but you've solved it. Tell us about the wisdom you used to get through that.
Yeah. And I don't know, just to be fair, I don't know that I'm going to answer this in a way that it's completely solved. But just because whenever I explain it, I think you'll know what I'm talking about here. But I think it goes back to what I just mentioned. It's the urgency. I think where I am good, I think where my value add is as an advisor is creating that urgency in people's minds. I don't know that I got that when I was 23 years old, starting out in business, 25 years old, whenever I made a move over into more of what I'm doing now. It was just business, right? It's like, how do I go out and work really hard and make $1? And now I tell people, if you're doing this, and you could see this in tons of businesses, I'm sure, out there with your perspective as well. If you're doing this just for the $1, man, there are a lot of easier things you could go do. I tell people that. I tell recruits that. I tell my own advisors that. I point to these buildings right out this window of this office I'm in, and I say, hey guys, if you're doing this just to make money, boy, there's a lot of places you can go make money. Don't grind it out and try to build a career here unless it's worth working through that for the impact that it's going to have, because that's where the real fulfillment's going to be. Money doesn't solve all issues. It's sure better to have it than not have it, right? I think anybody would say that, but it's what you do with it that either makes or breaks you. But I would just say for me, it's creating the urgency around planning, creating it faster in people who hopefully who meet with me know that I'm a person of action. And I think sometimes in sales or mentoring or counseling, I look at what I do, I guess you could classify it as sales, but it's more guidance, it's more consultation. I want to provide as many options as I can and then give the clients the options to do whatever they want to do in their plan while giving them guidance along the way. But I think creating that urgency, watching too many people not take action on the things that I knew that they could, whether that's in their business planning or in their financial planning, or just things that they would share they wanted to do in their life that just, haven't happened yet. We all know that. We're guilty of it as well. But I think creating that urgency and creating the passion behind it where people can tell that I care. And man, I've got a lot of meetings where we'll sit there and talk for 2 hours and they'll say, man, aren't you going to ask me about all this stuff? And part of me is going, I really should be asking them about all this stuff that we should dive into for the business. But it's so much more important to create urgency around why we need to plan first, the pillars of financial success or wealth building, those sort of things. But I just really have fun just digging into more of just the life coaching stuff as well, which has been super fun. So long answer to the question there. I don't know that if that's necessarily something that I've solved, but I think I've solved it in my own mind, is that, yeah, we're working for income each day. None of us would do this for free, but what is the true underlying purpose? And getting that solved in my mind was extremely important. And now what I try to coach to other people along the way.
Well, I think your underlying theme too is the financial planning. I'm not saying it's commoditized, but it is more commoditized than the other thing. I've got a great example. As a guy out of Arkansas runs a digital marketing agency. They are starting now to offer free websites. These websites used to cost $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Now they're giving them away free.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my goodness! In response for retainer clients, so they can have that ongoing relationship with them from a marketing coaching perspective, because that's where the value's at. It's in the relational maneuvering and all of that. Listen, we can build the greatest templates and all of that, and we do. I mean, that's what we do in our business, is to help people build all the back-end systems and processes.
And I've seen them, and they're great.
But let's be honest. You can go read 10 books and get all of that stuff. Part of the value is that we've kind of curated and collated all that together in a logical framework. But more important than that, and this is the biggest piece of feedback that we've gotten coming out of 2016 into 2017, is, hey, Scott, can you spend more time working on me as the man? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd love to. Do you really want me to do that? Because I thought we got in this relationship for business coaching. They're going, yeah, but it's all together. And so, I think that's something that's starting to percolate. I think you're starting to see it. We're certainly starting to see it in our business. So, hey, Jarrod, let's go ahead and cut part 1 off. And we're going to do part 2 after the holidays, because I want to ask you that question of what's a major issue in your business that you have not solved. And man, you are churning right now to try and get that thing solved.
I wish I could answer it now, because that's something that's like kind of affecting me right now in my practice here. And I'm raring to go. So you're leading this thing. So if you're cutting us off, I'll follow you on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, we've got some group coaching clients to get to here in just a few minutes. This has been an absolute delight, Jarrod. I love chatting with you at all times. And we'll get connected on the podcast after the holidays and come back here. But thanks for your time.
Yeah, I would just say real quickly, I know you've got to run here, but I would say just as a parting shot here for my listeners that are going into the holidays and probably doing some reflection and vision casting and things like that. And I'll probably talk about this a little bit more next time too, but one of my greatest fears, I try not to focus on fear a lot. That's what I did most of my life, but this is the one that has me captivated. And that is the end of a life that is wasted. And one of the things, John Piper wrote a great book called Don't Waste Your Life. And I've skimmed through that a few times over and over, just going through some of the things in there. But get to the end of your life and realize how wasted it was from a spiritual or faith perspective. But also we could say that in our family relationships, our business. So I'd say for you guys turning the corner this year, there's nothing more impactful. You don't need all the tools. You don't need all the game plans. You don't need all the guidelines. You know more right now than you realize that you know. But just know if you can focus on that aspect of how can I make progress every day to not end with a wasted life. Gosh, I mean, just that's probably the most important thing that I can leave you with beyond any tips or tools or anything like that. So I'd leave you guys with that as you go into the holidays.
Well, and it's certainly an apropos time of year to be able to asking yourself that question. So I want to highlight and boost that. Make sure we're asking ourselves the question. And even right now, as we're trying to pack last minute things into the year, I feel that. I know you're feeling that as we try to pack stuff in at the end of the year. You know, that old phrase, nobody's going to get there in their life and say, man, I wish I'd have spent more time away from my kids and my wife at work.
Right.
You know, Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah, people are going to be more regretful of the things that they didn't do than the things that they actually did in business, and mostly in business for us as guys. So yeah.
Jarrod, Merry Christmas to the Warren household. So man, it's been a delight. Thanks. All right, we're going to go offline, guys. Everybody on Facebook, thanks for following us, joining us. Make sure to go subscribe to the Business on Purpose podcast. You can give a review. You can do all those fun things that we do with the podcast. But we also had one I want to highlight, actually been getting a lot of feedback on. Episode number 69, I talk a monologue about situational depression in business. And so make sure you go talk about that. We've been getting a lot of feedback on that. So, all right, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. Well done.
So I thought since we were on Facebook Live, I would see, I'm